To knit our first stitch, we're going to take our right needle and insert it through the back loop of the first stitch on our left needle, like so, creating a little X, and taking our working yarn, that's the yarn coming from the actual ball of yarn, not your tail, wrapping it around the back of the right-hand needle through this little ditch that's created by both needles, like so, and taking our right needle and dragging that wrap down and through the stitch on the left hand needle. And once it's through, you can now lift that stitch off the left needle and we have our first stitch. So let's do that again. I'm going to take my knitting needle and insert it through the back of the second stitch like so, creating an X, and then wrapping the yarn, my working yarn, around the right needle. Creating this wrap will create our new stitch. So once it's wrapped, we can now take our right needle and drag it down and through the next stitch on our left needle. And once it's through, we can lift it off like so. And we have two stitches, two new stitches on the right needle. Taking my right needle again, I'm going to insert it through the back loop of the third stitch on my left needle like so. And then wrapping the yarn around my right needle, through the valley, through the ditch, and then pulling that new wrap down and through the next stitch and lifting that stitch off like so. I'll do it again. Through the back loop, wrap, and pull that wrap through, lift the old stitch off. Insert through the back, wrap the yarn, shuttle it through, and lift it off. And the more muscle memory you build, the quicker this will become. And if you might notice that I'm tensioning my yarn a certain way. If you're not able to tension the yarn like this yet, don't worry. There's no wrong or right way to do it. You can certainly throw your yarn like this. This is definitely acceptable. It's not as fast as my method, which is also known as flicking, but it's also right. It's also a correct way to do it. Whichever method works best for you, that's the method that you should be using. You can always learn new techniques later, but use the one that comes more naturally to you right now. So this is throwing, and it's called throwing because, as you can see, like I'm, inserting my needle through the back loop, as you should, and taking my needle and throwing it around, as opposed to my method of flicking where I tension it like this and then flick it. It's called flicking because basically I'm just flicking my yarn around the needle as opposed to throwing it. It requires less motion, so it's a quick flick of the finger, if you will, and dragging in and out. And we have our first row of knitting. If you're throwing your yarn, this is what it will probably look like. And again, this is a very acceptable way to knit. A lot of people knit like this. When I first started knitting, I was knitting like this. If you want to give flicking a try, this is how I tension the yarn between my fingers. I wrap it around my pinky like this, then under these three fingers, and then I wrap the yarn twice around my index finger, and I'm ready to go. I'll do that again. Wrap it under these three fingers, like so. And the more you do this, the more second nature this motion will become, and you'll just do it in your sleep. So like so. And then I'm ready to knit, and I hold my yarn like this. And this helps give me an even tension as I'm knitting. So start through the back, like so. In, flick, through. In, flick, through. In, flick, through. And you can see how very little motion there is compared to throwing, where, again, you're inserting the yarn and then throwing. It's a wider motion, but again, equally as effective and appropriate. And once you reach the end of your row, 1, 2, 3. All the stitches that were on your left needle are now on your right needle, and your knitting should look something like this. And we're ready to start a new row. So to do that, we're going to swap needles in our hand. So our right needle is now in our left hand, and our left empty needle is now in our right hand, and we're ready to start a new row. And Basically, you just repeat what you just did on the last row. Like so.